Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Wednesday, July 30th, 2025. My dear friend Max Blumenthal joins us now. Max, thank you, my friend. I have a lot to ask you about, but I want to start with a poll that you sent to us. Chris, if you can put it up on the screen, showing the radical reduction in Trump's approval rating. I'll let you go through the numbers and then I'll start asking you the question. These numbers are striking, are they not?
Yeah, I was even shocked by him even being aware of the general trend.
So in July, we're talking about young people now, American voters age 18 to 29, Trump approval 28%. In February it was 55. Disapproval 72%. In February it was 45. To what do you attribute this? Is this a recognition of the slaughter and starvation in Gaza? Is it the Epstein saga? What do you think it is?
Yeah, it's all of that. And, the economy not really improving in a way that means anything in their lives. But Gaza is central to this. And this is not the only poll that illustrates the cataclysmic and I mean, I think what I would call the permanent shift among American youth on Gaza. There's a new Gallup poll out that shows that Netanyahu's approval rating has gone down 58 points since November 2023 among Americans, I think under the age of 40.
Wow.
That poll also shows that Democrats, only 9% of registered Democrats support Israel's war on Gaza, which is down by a lot. 71% of Republicans do support it, though.
But are most American Jews now Republicans? I'm saying that quizzically because when I was raised in a very ethnic neighborhood in northern New Jersey, everybody who was Jewish was a Democrat.
Well, I think you're seeing more and more rich American Jews who own large properties move into the Republican Party. But if you look at the polls on Jewish support for Mahmoud Mamdani in New York, there was nearly a majority Jewish support for Mamdani because Jews are progressive. Jews in general don't exclusively vote on Israel. If you look at like Jewish priorities in polls, it's not one of their top priorities. It's always the economy and then like social issues.
Right.
And they tend to be very progressive in New York. But then you have this class of Jews, I call them the Zionist billionaire class, and they are forming a group, I think, called New Yorkers for a Better Future, which is pooling together all of their vast resources in order to defeat Mamdani and force either Eric Adams or Andrew Cuomo, probably Andrew Cuomo, out of the race. I mean, and these are, the landlords, the developers of New York. The New York Times has a piece about it, but they won't state the obvious, which is that these are Zionist billionaires. They're not just business people.
Very, very interesting observation. Do you see a sudden consensus or recognition of the IDF slaughter and the Netanyahu orchestrated starvation in Gaza in the West? Is there any significance to what France and Great Britain did and to what Bernie Sanders and Senator Angus King have been saying? Is this the beginning of a change in opinion?
Well, just a few days after Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana formed a new left-wing party, an anti-war party in the UK, the Keir Starmer administration announced that the UK was abandoning its spy flights over Gaza, in which it shared intelligence with Israel, launching RAF spy planes from a base in Cyprus. So that's a real material change on the ground to pressure placed on Starmer. The announcement of a Palestinian state is an attempt to pressure Israel without bringing any meaningful pressure to bear. The UK, France, they could just end all military assistance to Israel and then start mobilizing EU member states to do the same and putting pressure on Germany, which is the number 2 arms supplier in the world to Israel. But they're not doing that. So that it's just more empty rhetoric. We are seeing lots of rhetoric, a lot of retroactive morality from the Democratic Party's elite in the US over Gaza, because it's moved from a phase of military slaughter, which they tended to tolerate. They tolerated, images of over 100 children in Gaza with bullets in their brain hit by Israeli snipers, which was reproduced in the New York Times. They tolerated the dropping of 2,000-pound baby buster bombs supplied by the Biden administration on refugee camps with no military value, killing 150, 200 at a time. But now Israel is moving into its final solution. As Israeli Heritage Minister Amichai Eliyahu clearly stated, we are racing towards the clearing out of Gaza. We will make Gaza Jewish. And that's the plan. And Trump is president. They don't have to run cover for Biden anymore. They ran cover for Biden for 18 months and handed the baton of the Gaza genocide off to Trump. But now it's politically convenient. And so we're seeing Hillary Clinton come out and say the humanitarian situation's terrible. People are starving. Cory Booker, whose whole career was financed by the Israel lobby, is speaking up. Amy Klobuchar, who just a week and a half ago posed with Netanyahu in a photo, is speaking up from the Senate floor. Even the Jewish Democratic Coalition has introduced a statement. And the New York Times is doing reporting on its front page that we haven't seen before, really dramatizing the famine and getting harshly attacked by the Israel lobby for it. So they're sort of seeing the writing on the wall, which is full Auschwitz, Holocaust, and they're afraid of the judgment of history because they supported it for so long.
Here's somebody who I wish he had said this 3 years ago. You'll know him in an instant. Cut number 20.
Senator, when you hear the Israeli Prime Minister saying there's no starvation happening in Gaza, what, do you believe he's lying?
Of course he's lying. He is a disgusting liar. Israel had a right to defend itself from the terrible Hamas attack. But I think everybody understands that in the last 2.5 years, they have been waging a brutal, horrific, almost unprecedented type of war, not just against Hamas, but against the Palestinian people. So you got an area, territory there of 2.2 million people. They have already killed 60,000. They have injured 140,000, most of whom are women, children, and the elderly. They have virtually completely destroyed the entire infrastructure of Gaza, virtually all of the schools, the healthcare system, over 70% of the housing, the water system, and now, as you mentioned, over the last period of time, they have prevented humanitarian aid coming in, and there is now mass malnutrition, and children are starving to death.
That phrase before, he's a disgusting liar. Not just a liar, a disgusting liar.
Well, he's channeling the mood of his base. And if you watch Bernie Sanders, the national rallies that he was doing, where he was touring with AOC, filling up arenas, anytime he would mention cutting off arms to Israel, the crowd would erupt in cheers. This is what they want to hear from politicians on the Democratic side of the aisle. And Bernie Sanders now has a bill with his counterpart in Vermont, Angus King, to cut off arms to Israel in order to force a ceasefire. This is exactly what needs to be done. It's the only way there can be a ceasefire, is to cut off all military aid to Israel, including and especially the Iron Dome, which allows them to conduct these one-way slaughters. AOC voted against that. But Bernie Sanders, it needs to be said, he's part of the problem he helped bring us to this point of crisis, because back in May 2024, when there are workable ceasefire deals clearly on the table, Bernie denounced them under the guidance and orders of Tony Blinken and the Biden administration. And he even sent his top former aide, Matt Duss, out into left-wing progressive media to defend what Bernie Sanders was doing, which was utterly disgusting. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Republican who, ultimate super MAGA Republican, who 2 years ago led the charge to censor Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian in Congress, for her comments calling what Israel was doing a genocide, is now the first Republican to call what Israel is doing in Gaza a genocide, and to condemn someone within her own party, Randy Fine, for declaring that he's fine with people starving in Gaza. So this is hugely significant. And Marjorie Taylor Greene has done something that Bernie Sanders refuses to do, which is to say the G word. Bernie Sanders still refuses to say this is a genocide. I think possibly because, his buddies in the Biden administration could be implicated and go to The Hague in an ideal world.
She has also said, and I'm not a fan of hers either, but in this, I give her a lot of credit. She has also said Israel should always be referred to as nuclear armed Israel, which of course the federal government will never acknowledge. Netanyahu's not going to acknowledge.
Yeah, that's a great point. They have 200, 250 possible nuclear warheads, which can be launched through its Jericho missile system.
From stolen technology.
Yeah.
Is there any question but that there is starvation in Gaza? Before you answer, cut number 17. That's it.
Israel is presented as though we are applying a campaign of starvation in Gaza. What a bold-faced lie. There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza.
He did say after that there is no starvation in Gaza. That's the disgusting liar of whom Senator Sanders spoke.
Well, yeah, Netanyahu's lying because his mouth is moving. And that clip will feature one day in the future Gaza Holocaust Museum, because starvation is so obvious and so apparent in Gaza. And you can follow an array of people who just are common Gaza residents who are discussing what they're dealing with the pangs of hunger that they experience every day on Twitter X. Are they all just lying in unison? Is this all this gigantic psyop? Why are tens of thousands of young men willing to risk their lives walking kilometers and kilometers through a war zone where they're attacked by Israeli quadricopters, tanks, snipers in order to reach the one or two Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites that are set up in the south of Israel? And why are those sites there? Not of Israel, in Western Rafah. Why are they there? This is all part of a larger plan that we've watched unfold since December or January 2024. We have to go back to January 2024. That's when Israel introduced its PSYOP attacking UNRWA, the UN relief organization that had been in charge of feeding and educating the refugee population of Gaza, which is the majority population. And it was very clear that once Israel destroyed this institution, which it has officially banned from operating in Gaza, that starvation would take place because there was nothing to replace it. And they did so through articles in the Wall Street Journal claiming that UNRWA employees participated in the October 7th attack, complete fraud, authored by a journalist named Carrie Keller-Lynn, who turns out to have been a former IDF spokeswoman who had made Aliyah to Israel. Tony Blinken signed off on the PSYOP and banned or suspended U.S. aid to UNRWA. Tony Blinken helped set the stage for this. And during that whole period in northern Gaza, Israel was massacring crowds of aid seekers who would approach aid trucks in order to ethnically cleanse that area. So the whole point of this is being spelled out clearly if you pay attention to Israeli cabinet ministers. They want to move the population to the south of Gaza, which is the only place where there's food. And then the Israeli defense minister, Israel Katz, has announced that they will build a concentration camp there to hold 500,000 people. They will not be allowed to leave unless they go south into the Sinai desert and leave forever, because this is an ethnic cleansing plan. So starve the population, force them south where there's the only food, concentrate them, and then gradually filter them out to Egypt. And, in the background is a possible conflict with Egypt, which is the last strong Arab army in the region, which is resisting this ethnic cleansing plan. So you have all the ingredients for not just a Holocaust, but also another regional war.
You have to hear Ben Gvir if you haven't heard this. It's an attack on Netanyahu from the right for allowing any food trucks in whatsoever. This is disgusting. Chris, number 18.
A moral bankruptcy that while our hostages are in Gaza, our prime minister is transferring humanitarian aid to Gaza. I think that at this stage, the only thing that should have been sent to Gaza is one thing: bombs. Bomb, conquer, encourage immigration, and win the war.
Is this an attitude shared by a significant portion of the Israeli populace?
Well, that's why Netanyahu is doing what he's doing, except the difference is Netanyahu believes that this can happen in stages, and that if he allows minimal aid in, as he said, we have to allow minimal aid in because the world won't let us get away with this. He said this in Hebrew just last week. And Ben Gvir's point of contention is no minimal aid, just starve them until they die or leave. Itamar Ben Gvir is an acolyte of Meir Kahane, who I think defines the position of the Israeli government. And Meir Kahane's his mission was to get the Israeli government to advance a plan to force all Palestinians out to Jordan or to Egypt unless they would take an oath of loyalty to Zionism and the Jewish state. And that's what Ben Gvir is seeking to do under the auspices of this war. And Ben Gvir, he really speaks for the Israeli public, as we see through the Penn State poll from June, showing that a majority of Jewish Israelis support the full ethnic cleansing of Gaza. He represents that. He doesn't win all the votes of that part of the population for various reasons, but by being a member of Netanyahu's coalition, he forces Netanyahu to absorb, to advance the genocidal agenda, to head off a surge of the messianic right that Ben Gvir represents. So what you hear from Ben Gvir, it's really the pulse of the Jewish Israeli public.
This low life that you approached in the Capitol, Congressman Randy Fine, who's publicly said he's in favor of starving children. The New Republic is reporting that AIPAC abruptly dropped him from its website. Is this the guy you approached, Max?
It is. This is the so-called Hebrew Hammer.
Wow. Is he Jewish?
He is. And I saw him, I think he donned a kippah just to go into this media gaggle event that was planned for Republican backbenchers so he could pose as the Hebrew Hammer. I called him the Hebrew Scammer there to his face. Maybe the more appropriate name for him would be the Hebrew Heifer. And I hear that I hear that after losing his AIPAC endorsement, he's also lost his endorsement from Cracker Barrel, which is a real tragedy.
All right, getting back to other matters. Does Epstein fit into any of this geopolitically? Not Epstein the person, Epstein the saga.
For sure. I mean, it's not being dramatized that way by the opinion makers, which now are the Beltway media, who are questioning Trump about Epstein everywhere he goes and eliciting some very revealing responses, as we just saw on Air Force One.
Yes.
Or by the Democrats, who finally decided to talk about Epstein. I don't know why they didn't do it during the presidential campaign when they're supposed to make their case about Trump. Maybe, I don't know. It would have complicated the primetime final DNC speech by Bill Clinton, but they finally decided to use it as a point of attack on Trump, and it's falling on fertile soil. But there's another element to it. I think you interviewed Ryan Dawson.
Yes.
Whitney Webb has talked about this, and we've talked about it at the Gray Zone, which is that Epstein, he comes from the heart of he comes from the heart of the Zionist movement. And he was hooked up with this socialite, Ghislaine Maxwell, whose father was a key mover for Israeli intelligence, was extremely influential in European politics, got a de facto state funeral in Israel attended by current and former Mossad chiefs. How did she just wind up in his midst? He was the money manager for Les Wexner, who's doesn't just help dominate Ohio politics and the key swing state of the U.S., basically controls Ohio State University, former CEO of Victoria's Secret, but also uses his money on behalf of Israel, and was one of the founding members of the Mega Group in 1998, a constellation, or you could even call it, if you want to be more dark about the whole thing, a cabal of 50 Zionist billionaires who are committed to advancing the cause of Israel in the United States. I think Jared Kushner's father was a member of this as well. So Epstein was in the middle of all this. He was very close to Alan Dershowitz, who was Israel's lawyer, was almost appointed to be UN ambassador to Israel by Netanyahu. Epstein had relationships with 3 former Israeli prime ministers. Ehud Barak was his buddy, and he arranged a meeting with JP Morgan executives for Netanyahu, or for those executives with Netanyahu. I think if he were alive today and he weren't a target of so many legal dramas and legal intrigues, he would have been campaigning alongside Les Wexner and Alan Dershowitz to crush the student protesters at Harvard and Ivy League universities.
Right.
Definitely Israel intelligence adjacent, and it speaks to the possibility of so many other blackmail options against Trump, and raises so many questions. When you consider, for example, that Netanyahu, according to a new book, and this is something that we had seen reported going back to the 90s, reportedly used tapes he had recorded, or Israeli intelligence had acquired, of Bill Clinton cavorting with Monica Lewinsky to blackmail Bill Clinton into releasing the Israeli spy, former U.S. Naval Intelligence officer Jonathan Pollard. So there's a real pretext here.
Wow. I fear that the Epstein imbroglio might begin to engulf Trump, and then he'll do something to get it off the front pages, which would be to start a war. He'll bomb Iran again. He'll bomb Tehran. There'll be some pretext. When all else fails, they take you to war. Trump may follow. That's what I fear.
Well, just for reference, the book that I mentioned is by Daniel Halper, who was a neocon at the Weekly Standard, not a friend of the Clintons, but someone who would have sources in Israel. And the book is called Clinton Incorporated. So if anyone wants to check what I said, as far as I've been hearing this a lot, that Trump will seek to change the subject to a war with Iran. Another wag the dog scenario.
Right.
Well, when Clinton did that during the Lewinsky saga, it was, what do they call it? Like pinpoint strikes. Like these were sort of symbolic strikes. You can't do a symbolic strike against Iran, and you would draw Israel in as well. And we're learning that Israel suffered much more structural damage, including to its oil refinery in Haifa, which is causing transportation problems across Israel, than we previously knew because of Israeli official censorship. When I talked to contacts in Iran, their sense was that they were actually winning a war of attrition and that they wanted to continue the war. And now there's a lot of anger at the reformist government because they believe that they stopped the war in order to reignite negotiations with the U.S. So it would make very little sense to me tactically for Trump to suddenly attack Iran on the grounds that it was still refining uranium. The American public would not support it. And just look at Trump's numbers. We started this interview with a look at Trump's numbers. I think Trump attacking Iran is also one key reason why the youth are turning against him and why Americans in general are turning against him.
Good points, Max. Thank you very much, my dear friend. Thanks for parrying across the board and all this stuff. And thanks also for some of your stand-up one-liners, which were hilarious about Congressman Fine. All the best, my
I
friend.
need somewhere
We'll
to
see
try him out for the next gig.
Yes. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Take care, Judge.
Yeah. Bye-bye. A great human being, brilliant and hilarious. Coming up at 3 o'clock, Phil Giraldi, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.